I'm stoked to have you because you share a lot of the same career path kind of challenges that I've faced as sort of a business owner, but also as an operator. And you're working in the very specific world of executive protection, but more from the corporate and even the global level. You guys are kind of all over the world at this point, 1,000 employees strong. That's a big company. It's a lot to manage, and I'd love to dig into a little bit of that, as well as kind of what the day-to-day looks like. Maybe you can enlighten us on what's happening in the world of EP right now, and particularly on the business side, because it is one of the largest growing now, like, markets and I guess employment markets and in the world at the moment. So anyway, lots to cover.
Yeah.
I'd love to find out a little bit more about you and kind of how you got into this. I think you're coming at this from maybe a little bit of a different angle than what most people might think, just in terms of your background personally. So maybe we hear a little bit about that first.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's funny. Everyone always assumes when they hear executive protection, the next thing is, oh, you're former military.
Right, or law enforcement.
Right. And that's not me. So I grew up in Idaho, just kind of small kid, small town sort of deal. And always wanted to get out. Like, I love Idaho, but just I wanted to get out of the small town. And I ended up going to school in Arizona and kind of found my way around eventually, criminal justice degree, political science degree, which, like, they should really put those with communications because they're useless degrees. Like,
so was the goal to be a cop?
The goal, so this is wild. So initially I wanted to do like biomedical, but with a focus on pathogens. And I got in and I did a semester of biology and a semester of chemistry. And I asked the professor, I was like, hey, how long before we do actual medicine? And they're like, 8 years. Yeah. And I was like, well, that's not me. That's not me. So I kind of pivoted, took the part where I wanted to look at like the pathogens, the, sort of, I guess, terrorism, but like that national security approach, and just went, okay, criminal justice and political science, I want those. I want something I can talk about when I go out with friends, not something where I'm like, hey, how about those electrons bouncing off of, and, no one knows what they're talking about.
All right.
So I really wanted to focus on something that was relevant. And, I was a 9/11 kid. I was just old enough to remember a lot of that. And so it really impacted my youth. And so I was really passionate about being involved in security and what ultimately became protection. And so with that, when my program, I needed to do an internship, and all the internships are like, go to the clerk's office, fill out paperwork,
fill out the form,
get coffee. And I just didn't want to do that. So at the time I was also going through EMT school. I was an EMT. So Arizona has a volunteer EMT program. So I was volunteering as an EMT, and then I went to Executive Security International. So it's a 30-day residency program, and I used that as my internship. And that's an executive protection school.
So you get to leverage both things. All right, great.
Yeah, and so that was my first introduction to it. And from there, it really was a jumping off point. I made some contacts, and because of the EMT side that I've been working as an EMT, they really kind of recruited me into, hey, we have some clients that would like some medical support, someone who's dedicated. You should apply for this company, Gavin Becker and Associates.
Okay.
And so that's kind of how I jumped in. Going in, I was like, I think the second youngest person to join the company ever.
And how old was that?
20. I just turned 22.
Wow. So, yeah, that's young.
Really young. I think the youngest was like 21 in a couple months, and I was like 10 months older than that person.
Wow. That's just young period. I think that gives a lot of insight to how fast things can happen and being in the right place at the right time. But if you're hiring 22-year-olds to take on quite a bit of liability and responsibility, they have a strong need.
It was. And I think also, like, I was always a little bit more ahead. Like, I was always looking at the what's next, in terms of college and everything. So I was always working. I was always trying to learn and fill in the blanks and the gaps in just rote education with, EMT programs, things like that, going to ESI. So I'd had more exposure. And so I kind of fit in real well. And it's interesting, it's timing is everything. I really wanted to do federal law enforcement, like really bad. I went and took the Border Patrol exam. Like, being in Arizona, they push a lot of people to Border Patrol. So went and took that. I had an internship lined up with the Marshals. I had an internship lined up with the DEA. and it was really kind of like burgeoning. And then all of a sudden,
they cut everything off.
The hiring freeze hit. And so it was done. And it's interesting. You look at careers, like where would we have gone? At that point, I thought like, well, this sucks. Like this is 5 years worth of time that I'm going to have to just wallow and, not know what to do. Maybe local law enforcement, which was never a passion of mine. It's a passion for other people, but it was something that even at that age, I knew if I'm not passionate about it, it's not the job for me.
Yep.
And then I kind of fell into EP and it clicked and it just took off. So for me, what started as medical support grew into a larger, now almost 10-year career. So kind of been an interesting journey. I said I didn't want to commute to an office when I joined. And the first thing they did is I commuted to an office as part
of done that.
Yeah. And so it was kind of an interesting growth where I really matured. I was put in situations that I wasn't maybe ready for, but I had a good team around me that really kind of helped push me into it. And I grew into management level pretty quick. And then just continued from there until I finally pivoted to a training side because I always had a passion for teaching, and then slowly worked my way until, now I'm the director of training for Crisis 24.
Which catches us up to date on what you're doing. So director of training, I'll circle back to that. When you came in, you said you were learning some lessons and there were some people there to take care of you and mentor you and whatever. What are those lessons at that point in life? Like, what are the real things that you're learning there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's everything that a young kid is learning at that point from, I was living alone in a city where I had no support structure. So how do you provide and still have a life for yourself? And then how are you successful in a job where you don't know anybody and it's kind of new, like you don't go to school for like coding and then you become, like a computer engineer and you've kind of, it's a jumping off point. With EP, it's very much on the job learning. Like you can think that you're prepared, but the reality of domestic executive protection work is that a lot of it is learning how to do it on the job. Every client's unique. You learn that right away. And so what works with one client won't necessarily work with another. So it was kind of learning, okay, how do I navigate this? And as a young guy with a young guy's ego, you learn to check that really quick. And so that was an interesting point. And, I had some really good managers around me and some really good people who had kind of been there, done that. And they really helped me like figure out like, hey, here's some things that you're doing well. Here's some things you need to work on, both on the tactical. I'm going to use tactical. Like I hate that word, but like
I hear you.
The physical tactical side as well as in life. How do you
be an adult?
Yeah. How do you manage like company politics? How do you manage interpersonal relations? Things like that. So it was really interesting, kind of very quick trial by fire learning point for me.